Room for a real education. But the key ingredient is good teachers. So how are teachers doing as this new school year begins? Our cover story is reported by Tony DeCopel.
There's no denying that summer is over, and that means back to school.
You also need to identify the political platform. What are they running for?
A time when many of Kara Stoltenberg's high school English students in Norman, Oklahoma have put their summer jobs behind them.
This is my brochure.
To focus on school. Her? Not so much.
Okay, so you figured this out if you download a watermark draft.
You have a whole day of school and then you come here?
Yes, I do. Get to school typically around 8. Technically off the clock at around 4:20. Finish things up at school and then head over here.
The 29-year-old had a retail job back in college, but after getting a master's degree, she thought those days were behind her.
People kept telling me the same thing, like the pay's not great, the pay's not great. And I heard that and I understood that. I don't think anyone could have really prepared me for how close I would be cutting it.
Nationwide, about 1 in 5 teachers has a second job during the school year, which is not so surprising when you consider that since 1996, inflation-adjusted pay for a public school teacher has actually fallen. The average annual teacher salary today, just over $60,000, with nearly a third making less than $45,000 a year.
And we have all class period today too.
Including Kara Stoltenberg. Fury over those flat and falling wages helped spark a movement, one that in the last 18 months has swept through conservative red states
enough is enough,
and liberal blue cities, as tens of thousands of teachers walked off the job.
They feel that the expectations for them have risen and their pay has really not kept up.
Dana Goldstein is an education reporter for the New York Times and author of a 2014 book about the history of teaching. She says low pay has been a problem since the early 1800s, a time when most teachers in America were men.
When it came time to have universal public education for all American kids, Horace Mann, the father of our public school system, said, "I have an idea. Let's bring women in as teachers, then we can expand public education and it will not cost quite as much."
Because we don't have to pay women as much.
Exactly. At that time it was legal. You could pay women half as much.
But Goldstein says the recent strikes are about more than just pay. She says many teachers simply don't feel respected.
Education standards in the nation's schools today came in for blistering criticism.
And it's a feeling she traces back to a landmark 1983 report from the Reagan administration. A nation at risk.
If a foreign nation had done to our schools what we ourselves have done to them, we would be justified in calling it an act of war.
One of the arguments it made was that, teachers and the sort of low intellectual capacity of some teachers was to blame for kids having low test scores and not being able to compete internationally.
So it wasn't only that schools were failing, it was teachers were failing.
Yes.
That's a big change.
Yeah, it was a big change. And I think for many teachers, that was the beginning of a feeling that they were being unfairly portrayed and unfairly treated by policymakers, by politicians.
As new mandates to improve test scores, track student progress, and justify every lesson were piling up, everyone else, it seemed, piled on.
We want to reward good teachers and stop making excuses for bad ones.
When I was in that classroom, I was the best teacher they could ever have. 16 people had to share the pizza. This is all you're getting.
Inside his 4th grade classroom near Tulsa, Eric Weingartner felt like he was making a difference.
Is going to be the larger one, so you were right.
But increasing demands outside the classroom got in the way.
When I first started teaching, you might have 1 meeting a month. When I left, you would have 2 meetings a week. You'd also have 2 meetings during the school day. You might have one before. And the amount of paperwork is insane.
How are the hours?
Well, that's where they kind of trick you. Like, you get summers off, you get every vacation off, and you're only there for 7 hours a day. But that is not true at all. What you don't see behind the scenes is all the things that are required of you to take up your time. So yes, students might have left the classroom, but you will be there before they get there, and you'll be there long after.
And it was challenging to do it all on a teacher's salary in Oklahoma.
When we bought our first house, the only way we could afford it was we had to take on multiple jobs. I worked at Sears. I'd also worked as the janitor at the school district too. So I would get out of school, I would change my clothes, and then go right to janitor work. And I do that till about 9:30.
When Oklahoma's teachers walked out last year, they hadn't had a raise in a decade. After 10 days, when they returned, the raise they got fell thousands of dollars short of what they'd asked for.
I'm not waiting another 10 years for $6,000, no way.
And so, after 15 years as a teacher, the 40-year-old left the profession. He now works in a factory making $12,000 more a year. 30,000 teachers like him have left Oklahoma classrooms in the last 6 years alone, part of a nationwide trend contributing to teacher shortages all over the country. Kara Stoltenberg says the exodus is hard to watch.
In the English department, we've lost 26 teachers in 5.5 years. And they're teachers who love this career. I'm sorry. And the most painful part is that students are the ones who feel it. Like, they get attached to those teachers. They look forward to having them. And I have students telling me I should leave.
Where does that come from?
I think it's because they care and they see how hard we work.
Former Oklahoma teacher Carrie Hicks also decided to give up on teaching, but she didn't give up on education.
I was meeting with senators who were serving on the education committee. I said, hi, I'm Carrie Hicks. I'm a 4th grade math and science teacher at Deer Creek Elementary, and this year I have 28 students. And he put his hand up and told me I was lying. And he said, well, we know that the average class size in Oklahoma is 16. And I said, I don't know where you're getting your numbers, but I've been in education in Oklahoma for 7 years, and I've never had a class size less than 23.
So what did you decide in that moment?
That if they were unwilling to do the job, then I could do it better.
We haven't done enough to end our teacher shortage or tackle overcrowded classrooms.
Hicks decided to run for the state senate in Oklahoma, one of dozens of teachers who ran for political office all across the country last year.
The thing I miss the most.
The results were mixed, but Hicks defeated a long-serving senator who had voted against raising teacher pay.
If we're not willing to put more dollars into the classroom, if we're not willing to invest in the people that are going to be at the front of those classrooms either, then what is left for public education?
Polls show that when teachers strike for higher pay, their communities overwhelmingly support them. But consider this. When given the chance to actually pay teachers more by approving tax increases, very often those same voters say no. Until that changes, Kara Stoltenberg says many teachers will continue to struggle, so their students won't have to.
Anytime I think about my job, I picture my students. I don't want them to suffer at all because of restraints I have, and that's maybe why we're not getting the funding, we're not getting the raises necessarily that we need, because we still make it work and we do what we need to.
And later, back to school at the Gaffigans.